Me neither.
When we talk, we got to push the button on the microphone.
Hey, how's this?
Much better, thank you. And I
Voila.
should let you know that I have assigned my transportation engineering class to watch this meeting, so they are here in the room with me.
Oh, good. Welcome. Okay, consent agenda. Is there a motion that we approve the consent agenda?
So I motion to approve the consent agenda. This is Andy.
Do you have a motion? Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. We have then approval of the minutes from the February 13 meeting that included in the consent agenda. So we'll move to presentations. The first up is Mr. Spencer Montgomery going to talk with us about the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. Then we have two more items, 3.02, which is an update from Mr. Fazzari, and 3.03, an update from Mr. McAndrews. Time is yours, Mr. Montgomery.
The bottom section. Yep. Just at the beginning. Here we go. Okay, awesome. So I have met with you. I think this is my fourth time, maybe my fifth time. I'm Spencer Montgomery. I'm with JUB Engineers. My colleague Alex is here every time you meet. He serves as the city engineer. So I work with Alex a fair bit, and we cover a lot of different things for the city, but I'm here specifically to talk today about the safety action plan that we've been working on for the last 9-10 months or so. So I'm going to give you an update with that. Can you advance those, or can I push something? Okay. So just real quick, give you an update on some schedule things that we're working towards. The Safe Routes for All program has applications for implementation funding that are due towards the end of June on the 26th. And we've been working all year to be eligible to submit for implementation funds. And in order to do that, you have to have an approved safety action plan. And there are several components that make you eligible for that. And I'm going to review those with you so you can kind of see how we're approaching several of those. I had hoped to have been able to have a draft for you folks to review prior to this meeting, but not quite there just yet. Been working on projects and things like that. So, but we will do that prior to taking it to City Council so that you will have an opportunity to review the entire document and email back some comments if you may have any. So there are several components to the safety action plan. There has to be a leadership commitment and goal setting. The city actually has already adopted a resolution indicating that they have a goal of 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries. And as I've mentioned before in the past, the accident history in College Place shows very few serious injuries and fatalities. So we've been using data from 2019 to 2023, the 5 most recent years of data available. Only 2 fatalities and I believe 6, maybe only 4. I'm doing other plans as well for other jurisdictions, but not very many serious injury collisions. And unfortunately, I attended a webinar a few weeks ago regarding the implementation grant application process, and they're going to have us use nationwide data from 2018 to 2022. The 2 fatalities that we have were in 2023. So during the time period that we're reporting for the implementation grants, there's 0 fatalities. I mean, it's hard to say that that's bad news, but that's really good news, just not for the application process. I mean, I'd rather have the problem that you have than have a lot of serious accidents and fatalities to deal with. So there's a planning structure that you have to report, and that's basically how we've been working with you guys to get feedback and some guidance, public involvement as well. That's the engagement collaboration, step 4. Step 3 is the safety analysis. We've reported a lot of
Excuse me.
that to you with, hello.
Sorry, this is Commissioner Williams, and I wanted to ask a question on your point 3, the safety analysis.
Yes,
So if I'm understanding correctly, because they're telling us to use the data through 2022, we will show in less need of money for safety improvements, although we then had fatality the very next year.
that's correct. They did say that we could mention the fatalities in our narrative.
That was my question, is if we could put context around that in our narrative.
Yes, yeah, they did.
Okay.
They did give us that caveat, so we'll be sure to mention that on the project. So we'll have to sit down with the city and see what makes the most sense to apply for.
And I
At that
know
point.
we also had a very serious pedestrian accident about 2 years ago. I think that was actually the daughter of our engineering department secretary right here on 4th Avenue. So, so we
Right.
definitely still have some issues that we need to address.
Yes,
Thank you. I just wanted
Yes.
to ask that before I forgot.
very good. Thank you. So yes, we've done a fair bit of safety analysis to identify trends and all of that with respect to the collision history. We've done some significant public involvement. We've also reviewed some policy and process changes. I'll discuss briefly, strategies and project selections, and then progress and transparency. So I'm gonna walk through those with you. And you've had a lot of this, so I'm gonna go as quickly as I can, but because we did send this out last Friday morning, I'm not sure just when you got it, but there's a lot of information here that I wanted to go over. So step 1, the leadership commitment and goal setting. As I mentioned, the city, I think it was in 2022, adopted a goal of 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries by year 2032. And so that should be met. We'll look at the specific resolution and see if it maybe needs to be updated with respect to some statistics that I noticed in there. Go to the next. The planning structure is basically describing how we've worked with you, with the UTAC and with to review all the data and the procedure here. I'll go ahead to step 3. There are several things with respect to the safety analysis that we need to make sure that we've covered, that we've looked at existing conditions, historical trends, looked at the locations of crashes, severity, contributing factors, crash types, systemic and specific safety needs, and geographic dispersion of all of that. So we think that with all the maps and the tables that we provided and all that we think will meet that criteria pretty well. Step 4, go ahead to the next, is the engagement and collaboration process. We've talked to you, I think, extensively about the public involvement that has been carried forward. We had, I think when we reported last, there had been 415 comments, but there were a few more that came in. So I think we're up in the 430 something comments. That's significant. And we've been able to use that to identify some projects as well and to look at some things that can be helpful. Next. Component 5 is policy and process changes. At the bottom of the page there, I put a couple of things that we've done. We've looked at the street standards and updates, and let's see. Oh, I'll walk those later. Wanted to just share with you, I didn't get them into the PowerPoint, but one of my colleagues at the office, Daryl Moore, does a fair bit of work with the city of College Place as well. And earlier this year in February, some street standard updates were presented to city council that were updated. And so I wanted to just share those with you. Not all of them, but we added some vertical curve design criteria for public roadways to improve sight distance, added vision clearance reference to city standards for intersections and driveways, pedestrian ramp reference. Let's see, crosswalk grading criteria and design criteria for RRFBs, which is pedestrian crossings, street lighting design criteria, and bicycle lane striping. So those are some things that we do regularly, and we'll mention this in the plan that we do this regularly to just keep current with all the different national guidelines that there are. We've also reviewed the Blue Zones document that was adopted in early 2024. And there was a significant review of the city's complete streets policies in that document. Haven't quite finalized what we're going to recommend in here, but I discussed with you last time that there are some good recommendations in there, I think, but some of them come with some challenges to implement still at this point, as far as making them policies. And so we're trying to come to the right balance of things that can be adopted that the city is ready to and capable of implementing as far as making them policy changes. All right, so what I anticipate doing is in the next week or two, sending you a draft for your review. And so I would appreciate your good review of that section in the document. All right, next. So strategy and project selections. It asks, does the plan identify a comprehensive set of projects and strategies to address the safety problems in the action plan? And so I wanted to go through that a bit, but that's going to be the bulk of my presentation here. So I'm going to cover item 7 and 8 real quick, and then we're going to talk the rest of the time about projects and strategies, things like that. Okay, so we'll go on to section 7. We're going to recommend to the city that we evaluate the collision data in history every 5 years. Annually, and update the safety action plan every 5 years. And that's almost a requirement anyway to be eligible for safety action plan funds. And also one of the requirements that they have is that we post the safety action plan on the city's website, make it a public and transparent document for the public. And then next, so item 8 is the action plan. So I already mentioned we're gonna go to council the first Tuesday of June for a council workshop. Summarize all of the work that we've done and the recommendations that there are that week, and then the following week for adoption, and then that with their adoption and the self-certification checklist that should make us eligible for implementation funds. But as I mentioned, we're not holding out that we'll be highly competitive through that process for safety action plan implementation funds. But we can learn a little bit about that process to, if there are some increases in fatalities and things like that. All right, next. So there are some strategies. They talk about strategies and projects and prioritization. And I'm going to talk just this one slide about some strategies. The city has a good ADA transition plans for Americans with disabilities, and they've identified all of the missing gaps for sidewalks in the city. They've identified where there are other barriers, such as missing ramps. So if you're in a wheelchair and you cross the street and there's no ramp to get up on there, that's a barrier. So they've identified those. They've also identified all of the intersections that have traffic signals that don't have pedestrian buttons to use. So I think that plan was very well prepared. There's some other things we've listed here that I think would be important. Some of them just I think are good practice, and some of them came from comments that we received through the public. That we can review sight distance triangles for vegetation and parking obstructions. There were a number of comments for College Avenue and the side streets that approach College Avenue that said, sometimes there's cars there, and so I can't see when there's cars coming the other direction. And so we think it'd be worth evaluating if those parking should be trimmed back a little bit just to improve some sight distances, because College Avenue does have a fair number of collisions on it. We also had a number of comments about vegetation, getting in the sight triangles as well. And I guess I'm a firm believer that if people can see and they're not distracted. There are quite a few collisions in the city that are based on distracted driving. But if I think people are not distracted and that they can see, that they'll respond and that we can reduce the number of collisions that we have. I've noticed, and the city may have fixed some of this, but as I've gone around the city looking at street view on the computer, it looks like there are a number of pavement markings that could be refreshed that might help people to know where they should be in the street to be safe, and that there's potential pedestrians crossing there if the ped crossing has been worn down and things like that. Also, there's I think they call them retro reflective back plates for the traffic signals that help bring those out a little bit better to see. There were quite a few comments about speeds, and how people think that their neighbors and people traveling through town are going too fast. So that maybe a speed limit policy could be reviewed. There are some wider roads, so that second to last bullet there are some wider streets that we're recommending that they could be, the use for cars could be narrowed by adding some bike lanes with basically paint, I think, that would make the road feel a little narrower and help to maybe slow traffic down a little bit. That would make it a little bit safer. And then enforcement of traffic laws. I can't really say what's causing all the distracted driving. If it's cell phones, that was not reported in the comments on the officer reports, but I have to wonder if in our day and age, if that's not a significant part of it. All right, next slide. So last time I was here, I went through each intersection, or at least the top several intersections and the top several road segments, and told you what the primary causes were for those collisions, what kind of collisions they were. I'm not going to go through these tables, but I put them in here just to reference and not put all the pie charts and things in like I did before. But looking at this data, I gave you a list of projects, and you can go ahead to the next one, the next slide. And so there's a table for intersections, one for road segments, and then the next one here starts through kind of a summary of the list of those projects that we had shown you back in February. So next slide. So here's the projects for intersections. And I'm not going to read them all, but we had looked at Meadowbrook and Highway 125. A lot of rear ends there. And so if there's some advanced signage to help people to know that the light's going to turn red, they better slow down from their 50 miles an hour, right? So they don't hit the back of the line of cars, the queue. There is the potential of adding a roundabout there at Whitman and Larch also, but in the short term, we could do a four-way stop. Number of collisions going on at Whitman and Larch. There is a hill there too that some people said it was hard to stop in the winter. So maybe changing up some surface treatment that made it a higher level of friction might help people be able to slow down in the winter time. C Street and Myra, there's several of them here that we mentioned adding that reflective back. 12th and Larch has been talked about adding a roundabout there. Next slide. College at Lamperti, they're adding, I think maybe even later this year, a wall there to keep people from going into I think it's the southeast corner, going into the yard there, a little bit of a hill. So there must be some aspect to that intersection that just causes people to take it a little too wide or too fast, and so at least we can reduce the severity of collisions there, maybe by letting them know that there's a wall that they ought to slow down for. So Meyer Road and Highway 125, City of Walla Walla is putting a roundabout there as they extend Meyer Road to the south. College Avenue and 4th. Says update traffic signal heads with reflective back. I'll take this opportunity to talk about this spot because I'm going to share a table that was not in the materials I sent last Friday that has a more comprehensive list of things that were not identified because of our specific intersection. We've got a problem here. How do we address that problem? There are a number of other safety things that we can do that maybe aren't associated with a specific trend that we see. But at College Avenue and 4th, there was comment by somebody, there's a cycle track on the south side of 4th west of College, and it just ends. And they said, well, where does it go? It doesn't go anywhere. And so our suggestion here is that we consider extending that cycle track within the existing curb to curb space of that street and eliminating the left turn lanes, using that pavement to continue that cycle track all the way through east to at least Ash or maybe Birch, and then have some bike lane or bike route north and south on Ash and Birch and maybe even Broadway to go all the way from Whitman down to the Valley View, I think, down close to Lamperty. And gives a place other than College Avenue that goes north and south, and then use Bade Avenue on the west for a same thing. These are some of the recommendations that there were in the Blue Zones project as well, in the study there, that said, you know, we can't fit every mode on every street, and College Avenue is going to be primarily pedestrian oriented. So let's give the bicycles a place to go. And so I've done some analysis there that tells me that there's enough capacity in the traffic signal at 4th and College that we could take away the left turn lanes. You'd have to operate it split phased, meaning all the traffic east and west would be in one lane. So lefts, throughs, and rights would all occur at the same time. You would operate the eastbound and then the westbound. They wouldn't go at the same time. So it would function more safely that way. North-south would function much the way it does today. Was there a question?
Yes, this is Commissioner Williams. I have two questions. So you're talking about eliminating the left turn lanes on College, or
On
the left
4th.
turn lanes on College and 4th, or just 4th?
Just on 4th to make space for the existing bike lane to continue. And I call it a cycle track because both directions of the cycle facility are on the south side of the road. And so if we can
Okay.
move the eastbound through lane to the north a little bit, then we can continue that all the way through the intersection onto 4th Avenue east of College Avenue. So the north and southbound left turn lanes on College would remain.
Okay, so you're talking about then the bike lane would go all the way down 4th to Larch.
It could. And so far I've said at least to Ash or Birch, where it could then connect with a north-south facility.
Okay, and then I had another question about something that you said. You said that College Avenue is going to be dedicated to pedestrian, and it's our major through street, north and south. So
Yes.
it doesn't seem like a good pedestrian focus.
Well, but it's also a place where there's a lot of businesses, and so the people park there because they have businesses that they want to go to, and there's sidewalks. But there's not room to provide a bike lane on College Avenue with the vehicles and the sidewalks. So that's, I mean, for alternate modes, I mean, there's transit there as well. But for alternate modes, I think it would be best to separate the bikes and the peds by putting the bikes on other north-south facilities besides College Avenue. Does that make sense?
Okay, I understand. I thought you were meaning that it was going to be pedestrian prioritized over auto, which would be great in terms of, you know, the businesses and the college, but I just don't see it as being very practical at this point.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
thank
there are some major cities. I lived in Denver for a while, and they've got what they call the 16th Street Mall that is just transit, and then pedestrians and automobiles go other places, right? So, but no, I'm not suggesting that for College Avenue. It would remain much the way it is, but we would facilitate and invite bicyclists to use other facilities.
Great, thank you.
All right. Lamperty at Larch, we're suggesting an all-way stop there. The next slide. Okay, then here's some road segment projects. So there's, I think, the highest road segment that has the most collisions is Meadowbrook, south of Lamperty down to the highway, right? There's a lot of things going on there, and we're suggesting basically that we add a center median there. We often call it a C curb, to restrict some movements so that there aren't some left turns happening at the unsignalized locations. It's going to cause a little bit of extra rerouting for people, but it will eliminate a lot of conflict points. There is a potential of doing some other things, adding another signal, but I think that might clutter things up. And it was also suggested that road, comments from the city as well as from the public, be made into complete streets, basically adding some bike lanes there, a safe place for them to be. Quite a few people, I think, south of the highway that want to get from Telmarson up into the shopping area there and on their bikes and have a hard time doing that. Myra Road from Whitman to 12th, add a left turn lane at Garrison Village Way, if that's in the works. I think that's in the design phase and maybe almost complete, going to be completed with a lot of developer contribution as well. And eventually there will be a signal there. Once some other development happens, there's commercial that zoned on the northwest corner there that would likely cause the need for the traffic signal in the future. Some others, 125 at College, add some flashing beacons there again, because a lot of rear end accidents on the highway, traffic going faster there. 12th Street from Larch to Myra, add bike lanes there, make that a complete street. So it's pretty wide. That can all probably fit within the existing curb to curb. And there are sections that the city's already planning on 12th Street to fix a lot of things that are underground, fix the pavement, add some utilities underneath it in that process to repurpose some of the sections of the road for complete streets purposes. And when I say complete streets, we mean all modes for cars, bikes, and peds. All right. Let's see. The next slide. College from Whitman to 4th. These are, again, road segments. Update some pavement markings. It's hard to tell sometimes. As I mentioned, we don't have a huge database of collisions. Some of these that I'm calling are the highest ones. There may only be a half a dozen collisions in 5 years. And that's not a lot to be able to identify a lot of trends from. But some of the things that we did see is that some pavement marking could help people know where to be a little bit better. Same thing on College Avenue from 4th to 8th. I think there's just a lot of activity, and I think the parking is on some segments is used pretty well, other segments not so much, and there's just pros and cons of those extra conflicts with people opening their doors into the traveled way. There's not a lot of space there. All right. Go ahead and go down to the next slide. Okay, there's a lot of information on this, and I doubt if you guys can read it on there. We did send this out last Friday so that you could look at this, but one of the things that they were looking for was strategies, projects, and prioritization. And I've talked to you before about prioritization criteria, and here's the results. And so we've got 2 tables, one for intersections and one for road segments that basically rank all of the intersections of functionally classified streets and all of the road segments of functionally classified roads. And we used, I think it was 9 different factors. You know, what's the number of total collisions that you had, either at the intersection or on the road segment? How much traffic is there? How many fatal and serious injury collisions were there? What's the accident rate? And that kind of compares the total accidents with the amount of traffic. Disadvantaged users, and that one's a little bit complex, but there's several different factors. What's the likelihood that the demographics around that intersection or that road segment would have more pedestrians? So low car ownership, poverty, transit usage, safe routes to school, safe routes to school and transit comes in another column. But we looked at several of those things, and there were 5 or 6 of them that we looked at and kind of compared it to the regional average and gave it a low, medium, high ranking there to try to account for some of that. The idea here being that since we don't have a lot of fatalities, a lot of serious injuries, the places where we're most vulnerable is where there aren't places for pedestrians to be. That gives them a safe place. There are certainly many other projects besides just sidewalks, but if we can give pedestrians, bicyclists a safe place to be, where they need it the most, where there's high traffic and high speeds, then we think that we can reduce even more the number of fatal and serious collisions. We also looked at the number of public comments. How much interest was there from the public on it? And it didn't matter what the comment was about, but just how much interest was there from the public and how safe they felt on these different road segments. We looked at the speed and we assigned some points based upon the speed limit of a road, not the actual speeds that are being traveled, but what the speed limit is. Because if you look at that real close, you'll notice that you get a lot more points for the fastest roads. Any road over 35 miles an hour, and there's notes at the bottom that kind of tell how we assigned the points. Any road over 35 mile an hour is a lot more likely to cause a serious injury. So you didn't get very many points if you're 25. If you're 30, you got a lot more, but higher than 35, you get all the points there. Okay. We also looked at the lack of sidewalks. So basically looked at it and eyeballed whether there 25% of that road segment had sidewalks or 50% or 0 or 100% and gave a percentage of the points there as well. We looked at those road segments that had safe routes to school or transit routes and said that, hey, it's more likely that there could be people walking there, vulnerable people that could be walking there. And then we gave a total score and then we ranked them. So we went through that process for both the road segments and the intersections.
Yes, I have a question. Is this a good
Yes.
time to ask a question?
I'm sorry?
Is this a good time to ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm looking at the list of projects and you have points, which is great because now you can kind of see where your priorities are based on, the scores that were allocated. So the question I have is, are you required to provide how much each of these projects would cost to fund?
I have not seen anything that requires that.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking is, yes, it's great that you have a priority list. You allocated points based on a technical analysis. Now I'm thinking that now that you have that, you kind of look at the city's budget and then you look at how much, these particular ideas cost, and then you can kind of make an analysis as to kind of a short range, medium range, and long range projects, when you think you can be able to tackle this
Right.
based on the city's budget. So that's basically the reason for asking.
Okay. Appreciate that. So there are several pages after these 2 pages that have maps and whatnot that show the data that we used to assign points for each of those categories. I don't think I'm going to walk through all of these, but this just shows the total collisions. You can go to the next one. This shows the daily traffic volumes on each road segment. The next one shows where the fatalities and the serious injuries are in the red and the yellow, and then the blue ones are injuries, but not serious injuries. And then the next one shows the accident rates. And those rates are per million vehicle miles on segments or per million vehicles entering an intersection. Okay, the next one, this shows the demographic characteristics and just a summary of all the different categories that were combined. Those categories were listed at the bottom of those earlier tables as well. Okay, so that one there is for intersections, and then this one here is for road segments. And then the next one shows the public comments that we received. And then the next one shows the speed limits on different roads. And the next one shows the sidewalks and where those are at. The next one shows safe routes to school. And the one after that shows the school zones. And the one after that shows the transit routes. Okay. We did take some things to the public. First half of April, didn't get a lot of responses, but there were a couple of questions that I thought we'd share here. This shows how people generally feel with respect to safety traveling in College Place. So 6.8 average response out of 10, generally pretty safe. It's not that they feel unsafe. You can go to the next one. And this shows of a lot of those different safety categories, how do they rank them? What are the most important ones? And the most important one was pedestrian safety. Thought that was interesting on the left. Reducing collisions, road maintenance, public safety. Interesting, I guess, more so is that the bicycle, they aren't, I guess if you're not riding a bike, everybody walks, but not everybody rides a bike. And then the ADA wasn't very high either. On the right, we asked people to rank how much priority should be given to these different kinds of safety improvements. And these are the criteria that we had in that prioritization. So these are the same ones that you see there. And so they thought the highest priority should go to the fatal and serious injury history. So that's important. Safe routes to school, presence of sidewalks. I think all of those are important. Interestingly, though, probably the most important one of all of them is the speed. The faster cars are going, the more likelihood someone is to get hurt. All right, so that's what I had sent to you last Friday. You want to go to the next page after that one. Let me hand this out. This page that I'm handing out, I put it on the city website. I just forgot to attach it to the end of the presentation that was sent last Friday. I'm sorry. The updated file. Yes. Yeah. Oh, the updated file does? Oh, interesting.
Excuse me, could you, we couldn't hear you when you were walking around handing things out. So could you let us know what you handed out?
Yeah, and I thought I had a file with some updated materials. I apologize that I can't hand this to you. On the project website on the city's page, as part of the public involvement and the outreach that we did in April, this table here, we handed out, it's a list of projects that we identified from the public comments that were received last fall. The 430 some comments, we looked at those and tried to identify some low cost improvements that could be done, signage and striping and maybe even some vegetation, things like that, that could be relatively inexpensive, that could help with collisions. And so there's, I didn't count them and I didn't number them, but there's, I don't know, 12 to 15 different projects here. I'm disappointed that file didn't save for me. But I'll just read some of them to you. So, and actually some of these, after further study, I realize the city already has some projects that are associated with these. Like the first one says add lighting to Rose Street. That's in the city's tip. I've become more familiar with the city's tip in the last few weeks. Add pedestrian crossing to Homestead where the path crosses. Lighting on Whitman Drive corridor. Add a sign on Whitman for school zone that flashes during school hours. Birch and Fourth pedestrian crossing. They're also working on the project there. Signage and pavement marking to prevent vehicles from going into a house. So there's, I forget which street that's on. And I think it's at the, is it the end of Bade?
I think there actually was a vehicle that went into the house at the,
Yeah. And, you know, that they did, it was dark and they didn't know,
South end of
and
Bay,
the
yeah.
road curved
Right.
and they kept right on going. So I need more and better pavement markings on Homestead. Pedestrian lighting on Academy between 4th and Whitman. Convert Bade and 6th to a 4-way stop. That's another project that we've been working with the city on as well. A signal on College Avenue for fire and EMS to leave the station right out here. I think is common at most fire stations. Evaluate College Avenue for sight distance and parking, vegetation, etc. Trim the hedge at the corner of 6th and Birch. Trim vegetation at the corner of 12th and Birch, and trim vegetation at the corner of Lamperty and Meadowbrook. So there's a list of projects there. And then I have one more list that I'm going to pass out here as well. And I'll be right back to the microphone for you. So this is another list. They can't hear me when they're over here. So this list here, primarily comes, but not completely, but the first page shows all of the TIP projects, the Transportation Improvement Program projects that are, and all of these, we posted on the project website, the city's Transportation Improvement Program, as well as the Capital Improvement Program, because the city's making a lot of efforts to improve travel. With respect to sidewalks and bike paths and all those kinds of things. When they reconstruct, they're adding sidewalks, things like that. And so we wanted to get those in this plan so that those can be made eligible for not just the Safe Routes for All, but for many other grant types. Okay. I mentioned earlier that I'm not holding my breath that the city will be successful in getting safety implementation funds, but that does not mean that many other grant types have a safety component to it. And so they can maybe get more points for having these projects in their safety action plan when they apply for TIB funds and things like that. They can say this is our highest priority. So you'll notice that we've had several lists, right? We've got a prioritization list. We've got a list of the intersections and the road segments that have the highest number of collisions. And so we, as a city, we can look at that and kind of strategize and say, well, this project that we want to get some funding for shows up the best on this list. Or we can use multiple lists as we, you know, fill out applications for other funding sources. So I'm not going to read all of the TIP projects. I'm not that I think that you're super familiar with those, but those are there. But there are a couple of others that I did want to point out as well. Primarily on the second page, towards the bottom, there are some other projects that have been discussed, but I haven't found them in another document at least at this point. So this may be the first time. There are some places that we've also noted that it's in your tip, but it's also in the regional trails plan, or it's also in the capital improvement program. But towards the bottom of this, we talked a little bit about complete streets on Meadowbrook and Tomarson from Lamperty down south of the highway to Bliss. The bike lanes disappear there. And there were comments from the public about that. So I want to make sure that we let them know that we've heard Meadowbrook at Lamperty to do some intersection improvements there. 4th Street, add sidewalks, ADA, bike lanes, and ped lights there. Larch and C, install a roundabout or a traffic signal there. Whitman and Birch, I may have already mentioned that one somewhere else, but a pedestrian crossing there near the school. Southeast Central Avenue at Scenic View, could convert that to a four-way stop to help promote safety there. And then there's, let's see, 3 other locations where comments from the public were to add some RRFB, some pedestrian crossings, and those locations are at Davis and 4th and Ash, and Lamperti at Meadowbrook. And then I mentioned earlier, north-south either bike routes or bike lanes. I will have to look at a little closer at that, but on Ash, Birch, and Broadway on the east side of College, and then Bade Avenue on the west side, to designate those as bike routes or add bike lanes. And then 4th Street west of College to Ash, the other one that I talked about, taking away the left turn lanes and continuing the bike path there. So that's what I have. I know I presented a lot of material for you today. Happy to try to answer any questions that you may have. I know there have been a few along the way, but if you have others, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
I'll call for questions at this time. Commissioner Larson?
Hi, Commissioner Larson. I had a question on Whitman and Larch. I know that's a ways back.
Okay.
Don't we already have a four-way stop there?
Yes, we do.
It has a four-way stop.
Yeah.
So is it something different you were suggesting? Maybe I misunderstood.
Do you know how long that's been that way?
2 years.
Maybe the street view pictures are old. Okay.
It's been that way for a while. Okay.
Okay. But the traffic volumes are getting closer where a roundabout might help there at some point in the future as well.
Sure. It's just, I think, yeah, we were talking, your list mentioned a stop, I think a four-way stop there.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Commissioner Williams?
So I have 2 questions. First is, what is the data source for the traffic volumes?
The traffic volumes, I think it was September last fall, we collected those throughout the whole city on all of the functionally classified roads. So we got 2A traffic volumes collected by hour, by direction, gives us vehicle type. And so this is a lot of information that we will use for the comprehensive plan update that will be coming up soon, and some efforts there.
When in September was that done?
It was towards the end. I forget the exact dates, but I want to say in the last week of September, probably.
Okay, because I think we should double check that actually was done when the university was in session, because that changes both the traffic volumes and patterns quite substantially. And so and it doesn't start until late September.
Okay.
And, the elementary schools and high school being in session also changes it, but that would have been caught anytime in September, so.
Right, okay.
My other question, and I didn't see the stuff that you handed out, and I may have missed it as we went through, but pretty much every time we've gone through this, we've talked about 4th Street between College and Davis as being where we had a very significant pedestrian accident, as where there's not a curb cut to let people through, all the way between College and Bade, which is a really long way for somebody that's in a wheelchair, and that we have so many parking lots letting out on the north side, and it is almost impossible for. I actually bought a taller car and I still can't see coming out of the Kretschmar parking lot. And so we had submitted to the city a couple of years ago an analysis that one of my earlier transportation engineering classes did that actually found that the parking on the north side of 4th Street should be abolished through there. And at a minimum, the site triangles need to be reevaluated from coming out for all of those parking lots. And I did not see that on here.
Okay, so let me make sure, to summarize, the recommendation would be to remove the on-street parking on the north side of Fourth, west of College, to all the way to Bade.
Well, at least to Bade, but there are several more parking lots that let out between Bade and Davis. So, but at a minimum, the site triangles need to be reevaluated. And I did not see that on there. And also, as we noted in the winter, if you're trying to walk from the large classroom buildings here on Fourth Avenue over to the either direction, actually, on the sidewalk, you can't get through because there's so many utility poles that they can't really clean the snow off the sidewalk. But the pedestrian crosswalk was taken out a number of years ago. And so people are pretty much forced to jaywalk. And that's exactly where the child got hit. So at a minimum, between College and Bade on Fourth needs to be reevaluated for the center block crossing and the site triangles coming out of those parking lots.
Perfect, thank you.
Good questions, Commissioners Larson and Williams, and observations. Commissioner Gomez, questions?
So I already asked my question, but I just want to go back to the table where you did the analysis and assigned points. Basically, my question was about funding, which you addressed. Basically, how did you go about assigning points? I'm just curious. So I see here, you have like a metric, and then next to it, you have like a point system and what have you. How did you go about assigning those points for each of the metrics?
Well, I won't say it was overly scientific. We gave 100 points in each category, and we tried to spread those out in a reasonable way. So for example, I shared about the speed, but on like the traffic volumes, we said it once you're over a certain amount, then you have the highest risk, right? And then below that, we spread it out on a proportional share. So I think I set the maximum at like over 10,000 vehicles. That made it kind of easy math, I suppose, but I mean, that wasn't the intent, but that just seemed like a reasonable place. So any road that has a higher ADT than 10,000 got all the points. And if you only had 1,000, then you got 10% of the points in that particular category. Collision rates. I mean, we just looked at what the ranges were and tried to say, is this twice as bad as a different one, then give it twice as many points. So.
Okay, got it. I know that this is not exactly a scientific way. It's just kind of eyeballing and based on prior experience and what have you.
And then when it got done, we looked at it and said, does this seem reasonable? Do the ones that have the highest accident rates and the highest number of collisions and things like that, the highest speed limits, those go to the top? And they do. And that seemed to make sense. And we're open to suggestions. So as you read that, if you want to send me some comments or whatever, I think we're open to that if you see something that maybe we missed.
Okay. And then so you assign total number of points after you've done. So how does this help when you're kind of applying for a project? Does the point system in any way help when you're trying to pursue a particular project for funding?
Well, as I see it, there's at least 2 or 3 ways that I think that the safety action plan will help as we apply for funding from different grant sources, right? If you're high on the list of the risk factors on this sheet here, then you can say this is one of our highest risk corridors. for, you know, if we're applying for sidewalks and things like that. If there's other, there might be other locations from the other two lists, the intersection and the road segments that are high on the list because they just had a high volume of collisions. So those are two of the ways. Another way is to just be on the list, right?
Right.
That these are projects that the city has found are worthy of being in our safety action plan. And for sure, we're going to make sure that we reference the ADA transition plan, because anything in there is going to help get people off the street into a safe place.
Okay, so I have another question. So, you know, towards the beginning of the presentation, you talked about, is it a requirement to monitor on an annual basis? You're, you know, reviewing the accident data and kind of reporting it in a report. Is that like a recommendation, or is that something that's required for you to do?
It's required to monitor. The frequency is not specified.
Okay,
I think that College Place has few enough accidents that the city's probably pretty well aware when the bad ones happen.
yeah,
And so at the end of the year, when the data is available, you look through let's see, how many would we have? There's 450 roughly in 5 years, so there's going to be 90. And you can look through that and sort it in different ways and say, yeah, we remember these bad ones from last year, right?
right.
So I think if any of those are going to influence any of the trends, but to update it every 5 years, because then you have a full new set of data.
So the 5 year is a requirement then?
It's a requirement to be eligible for this type of grant.
Okay,
I don't know that if it's a requirement for other
right.
types of grants.
Types of grants, got it. Okay, no more questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Riggle.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Concluding words.
I'll just remind you, we would appreciate you to review the draft when it's available here in the next week or so. And that we'll be going to city council in early June. So if you have comments prior to that, we'll report your comments to city council as well, so that they can be up to speed on all that. All right.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
This is Commissioner Williams. I have one more comment. Sorry, it just occurred to me as I was thinking about Commissioner Larson's comment. And I understand the need to conserve your time in using Street View, but the city has done quite a lot of upgrades in the time since I think Google has sent a car around. So, and we also have like around 2,000 students over here who are often looking for jobs. There's also high school students. I'm wondering if some of the key places where you're suggesting changes, if maybe you could have a short-term internship for somebody to go around and take pictures so you can see what the current situation is. Or, some other way to get current pictures.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. We have two more presentation items. I think they'll be brief. Some project updates from our city engineer, Mr. Fazzari.
Yes, thank you. Just have a brief PowerPoint here, giving some updates on some of the projects that JUB is working on for the City of College Place. First one, at the wastewater treatment plant, we have one project under construction right now, which we're calling Phase 1A. Doing some upgrades to the headworks and some air piping and expansion of a big concrete basin. That is under construction. Total project cost about $5.5 million. And plan is to have construction continuing on throughout the end of this year. Next slide, please. Another project at the wastewater treatment plant, the next phase, which we're calling Phase 1B, are some additional upgrades that were previously shelved, and now we're going to move forward with, including a new UV disinfection system, a large pond, new pump stations, and new irrigation distribution system for the land out around the wastewater treatment plant. So we're going through the final design on that here in 2025, and we'll get that advertised for bids later this year. Next slide. The lift station number 5 project, nearing completion. We just had a startup of the lift station this last week, so it is now active and pumping sanitary sewage right now. We just have a few small things to wrap up on the project, including testing the backup generator for backup power, and final paving. So we're getting close to wrapping this project up. The reservoir number 4 project, that'll be a new 1 million gallon elevated water storage tank and 16-inch diameter transmission main. We have the 90% design completed and approved by the Department of Health. And we're breaking this project into 3 different phases for construction. The first project will coincide with the Majania Road construction project. Hopefully that will be going advertising for bids later this year. The second phase of the project being continuation of the transmission main west of the Majania Road project. And then project number 3 will be the elevated water tank itself. And we are modifying the alignment for the north-south portion of the water main to align with a proposed Owens Road extension. I think we have that on the next slide here. Yeah, so this shows very conceptual alignment for a future Owens Road being a north-south collector road. And so we're just making sure that our water transmission main aligns with this potential future route for Owens Road. Next slide, please. So we just wrapped up the Martin Airfield study. That was a $100,000 planning grant from CURB. And we summarized some of the key outcomes here. So on the 240 acre study, identified about 65 acres that would be suitable for industrial development out around Martin Airfield. We identified the infrastructure recommendations for providing that level of service out there, including needing a new sanitary sewer lift station and force main to serve this area, expansion of the city's water system out to this area. And determined that the existing roadway network would have the capacity for that type of development in the future. And there was a recommendation to establish an airport overlay zone for this area as well. So this study is complete, and I believe the next step is just to look for funding for some of the infrastructure improvements to serve this area. Next slide. This was the safety action plan, which Spencer just presented on. Nearing the end of developing this safety action plan and looking to get it adopted here soon and try to get some funding for some of the projects identified in it. And now to finish up just a couple of transportation projects that we were specifically asked to look at. We did cover these at our last UTAC meeting, but just kind of giving a brief overview. If you could pan up just a little bit more. So we evaluated the crossing here and determined that the best solution here would be an RRFB. The city standard is to have hardwired RRFBs. It would be very expensive to install that at this location. We estimated it would be about $200,000 for an RRFB, which is a pretty expensive project for this location. So we're currently looking at using solar powered RRFBs, which should reduce the cost quite a bit. Our engineers are still penciling out how much cheaper that would be, but we're going to look at that. And as of right now, it seems like a $200,000 project probably is a little bit infeasible until we're able to find funding for a project like that. But perhaps a solar powered one might be inexpensive enough that you might decide that this is a project that you might want to move forward with. So we owe you a little bit more information on this so that you can make that decision. Next slide. So then at 6th and Bade, this was one that Spencer had mentioned also. We were asked to look at options here, and they looked at different scenarios and looked at the standards and guidelines and determined that it's a recommendation to convert this to a four-way stop. And so that is a recommendation, and we're finalizing the memo and be sending that to your city staff so they have that in their hands and can move forward with executing that recommendation in the future. The Southeast 8th Sidewalk Project is another one that we're working on. Design is nearing completion. Should have that wrapped up here later this summer. There's a little bit of right-of-way acquisition that was required for this project, but that seems to be going relatively smoothly. Plan to advertise for bids around September and build it this winter. Next slide. And then we're also designing what we're calling the East-West Road and roundabout through the development around the Stone Creek area. So the roundabout, the model design is being finalized here soon. Working on sidewalk and pathway locations, trying to coordinate a little bit with some of the planned development around the area. And then the East-West Road, we're about halfway through the design on that project. Looking at options for bike lanes and pathways. Hoping to finalize those concepts and then meet with the city here in the next week to coordinate with the developer and what their roadway alignments might be and talk about traffic impact. So that design's kind of a work in progress. We're about halfway done, but continuing to work on that. Next slide. I think that's it. Yeah. So that was just kind of a brief update of some of the projects that we're working on.
Helpful information. Let's get some feedback, observations, questions. Commissioner Larson,
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
When you said at Martin Airfield that airport overlay was recommended, what is that?
You know, I haven't worked on that project, so I'm not exactly sure, but maybe I can.
Yeah, I can't say it because I act as staff support for Economic Development Commission. So basically, that's a type of zoning that would allow the airport and then ancillary like light industrial business uses and airport hangars and things like that. Because the quagmire out there at the moment is that we don't really have a zoning district in the city that allows airports at the moment. It's like grandfathered in. So it's grandfathered in. We basically have it in as light industrial, but light industrial is pretty silent on the whole concept of airport. If you remember from the last time when we went through the comprehensive plan, the new comprehensive plan is going to cover Martin Airfield, but the old one doesn't even address it because that's when the previous owner was going to pull it out of this UGA. So that's why it's a big deal to have this plan because we have nothing on it.
So it's basically a zoning. I'm sorry, with teaching transportation engineering this quarter, I had pavement overlays on my brain and I could not figure out how that fit. And my second comment is, again, to encourage us that when we get further along on looking at the Martin Airfield property and the area around there, that we look at potentially reclaimed water package plant rather than pumping all the way to our sewer system. Because if we're going to have industrial there, it's, it seems like it might be a good idea to just require the dual piping to use reclaimed water and put in a reclaimed water system all at the same time. So I don't expect that would have been part of this preliminary study, but I just bring it up every time so we don't forget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gomez.
I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Riggle.
No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fazzari, for the update.
Bet.
We have now as our final presentation item, I think it's final. Anybody else? Yeah, okay. This is an update from Public Works Director, Mr. McAndrews.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just give a quick verbal update on some of the projects we've got going on that JUB isn't necessarily as involved in. So we've talked about our Damson Avenue reconstruction project in the past. That is complete. I think there's a few minor warranty things to clean up here, but the project itself is complete, so that's good. Our post office crosswalk project is essentially complete, finally. The one punch list item that WashDOT as a funding agency came back with, which is I totally agree with, is that the striping on the crosswalk needs to be restriped. It's the project drug on, so it wore out. So we'll get that restriped and finalize that project. One of the ones Spencer mentioned as a recommendation is our Rose Street lighting project. And so we have that in the works. We're working on right-of-way acquisition. We need a little bit of right-of-way for some of the lights towards the east end of the road segment, on the south side of the road. But we have pre-purchased the lights, and as soon as the right-of-way is complete, we should be able to move forward with advertising and getting that project moving this year. And that will put street lights on Rose Street, both sides of Rose Street, from Cary Court to Wallula, Lambert, and then the south side of the street all the way up to College Avenue. So that'll be a nice addition for that road. Majania Road is well underway. We are well into the right-of-way acquisition process. We have one that's complete, signed, and paid for. A couple more that are right at the point of needing to be signed. Several that are very, very close, and then a couple that are kind of lingering. But the goal, and I think it will happen, is to have that wrapped up, right-of-way process wrapped up this summer, and get construction funds obligated in September, so that before the end of the fiscal year, so federal fiscal year, which will then put Majania ready to advertise this fall, and most likely construction starting on it early next year. So that's going to be a big project, but it'll be a good one. Our Well 8, formerly known as Well 7 project, is the new well that we have drilled down off the end of Teal Road. Initial tests came back really poor yields, which was discouraging. We've since got some another well driller to go back and do some well development. The yields went from, I think, 150 gallons a minute to over 500, and there's a little bit more work that we're planning to do, hoping to do, which we're hoping to bring that up to more like 700 or more. But once all that's complete, then we'll move forward with the well house. The design is essentially complete, and that project will happen as well. Similar timing to the Majania Road project. We have a Whitman multi-use pathway project. So there's a section of Whitman of the pathway. Well, there's a section of Whitman where there's no sidewalk whatsoever, and then another short section where it's just narrow 4 or 5 foot sidewalks with the multi-use path on each side. So we have some funding for design of that, and we have our RFQ essentially ready to go to select a consultant. I think it's going to advertise June 2nd, I think, early June. We'll hire a consultant to work on design of that, and the goal is to have design complete by spring next year. So, and then let's see, I guess that's kind of most of the updates. The one last thing I wanted to mention is just a little plug for Public Works. May 18th through 24th is National Public Works Week. So, think about that when you're out and about, and all the, public works for our city as well as all the other cities and counties. We're putting together several things that, within the city to help celebrate it and, educate city staff. And I think some of Melody's students are going to come out for a tour of the wastewater treatment plant on Monday of that week. And I think on Tuesday, our staff's going to go to Davis and meet with some of the second graders. We're gonna have a coloring contest for the kids, and we'll have a city tour for city staff of some of our facilities on Wednesday, and then some other, internal celebrations on Thursday, including the barbecue. So, trying to really celebrate Public Works and highlight what we do. I think a lot of it happens behind the scenes and folks don't realize. So, there's my little plug. National Public Works Week. I think that's all I got.
Thank you. Questions, observations? Let's see, Commissioner Larson,
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams, are your students still with us online?
Yep, I've got them for about 3 more minutes, so
Thank you for joining us,
shape.
students.
Um,
Questions from you?
any questions? I think they're kind of dumbfounded about what they're gonna have to put up with when they are engineers.
Yeah.
It's actually a different set. I'm bringing freshmen to the wastewater treatment plant for Public Works Week, and we are definitely looking forward to that. I'm really happy to hear about Public Works Week because it's one of those jobs that if you do it right, it's invisible.
Thank you. Commissioner Gomez,
No questions.
Commissioner Rickle.
Thank you to Public Works. You have to deal with most of the complaints that come in to the city. So we really appreciate all you've done. I'm glad they're having a barbecue.
Thank you. I believe that concludes our business. So
One item just to know, the Lions Park ribbon cutting, it's finally concluding. So, the big event will be on Thursday, May 29th, and there's basically 3 events going on at the same time there. So the ribbon cutting will be around 4:30-ish, but festivities will start to kick off around 4. The Lions Club will have, their fishing derby at the newly re-dredged and set up pond, and then beyond that, the farmers market is also moving back to Lions Park, and that'll kickstart the 2025 season at 4 p.m. So all 3 things will be going on.
I'm a neighbor to the park, and here about a week ago walked through the park with John Rickard. And I love what's happening there. My grandkids are going to love what's going on there. Very excited about this. Kudos to everybody who's had a part. Not seeing any other business. I'd entertain a motion to conclude.
I motion to conclude.
It has been moved.
I second.
It's seconded. Those in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Have a good evening. Thank you.